There we go. Hopefully they can hear us now. Well, all right, here we go then, and we'll fade over with the real stuff.
Well, that was exciting. No, it wasn't. That's not how you keep your blood pressure down or anything like that. Welcome again.
We relocated we should have a webcam behind us because there's all kinds of stuff in our dining room.
Yes,
We'll take a photograph of it afterwards and post it on Facebook. There's all kinds of stuff down here right now. We relocated it from my office, so.
And it was working up there, relocated it down, and it didn't work. So, but we figured it out. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. Let's see if we can remember what the beginning was. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry it was a huge glitch. It's his fault. It's always the man's fault.
It's my fault.
Just saying.
I'm comfortable with it.
Anyway, we're here tonight for a seminar. One of the things that our team is really focused on is education. Educating folks about what's going on with the market, how things work, and all of that. So we're changing tonight's seminar. Normally it's a seller seminar, but we're changing tonight's seminar, obviously virtually, but to make it more about what's going on in the market at the moment, what we predict is going to be going on in the market in the next, say, 2020, possibly into 2021. And if you're thinking about buying and selling, how does that impact what your plans, what's going to change your plans? But first off, I'm Danny Fleming, Marcus Collins.
I'm Marcus Collins.
Of the MA Properties Online team. And here's a photo of us all. You can see our dog, who was barking during that as well, but you didn't hear him, so that's okay. There's 7 agents in the team, and we've got 5 full-time support folks, who are all wonderful, working, and thank you. They were the ones telling us that the sound wasn't working to begin with anyway. So again, and what the agenda is tonight is we're going to cover smart decisions. Again, what we were mentioning, if you're thinking about selling or buying in 2020, what does that look like? And how we can help you with virtual buying and selling in that arena. So, yeah, I think we'll leave it over to you now, even though you failed this one. He's not going to live that one down.
No, I'm never going to live that down. Anyway, moving on quickly. With no further ado.
Oh, and when Jen's saying that she can hear us. Thank you,
Thank you. So let's talk about smart decisions. And normally when I do the buyers and the seller seminar, we go in depth into what's happening in the market, what happened in the market, in this case from 2019, but also what the predictions are for 2020. I've included some of that in because I think it's important to understand what we were predicting in January, because it's likely over the next 3-4 months things will be turned on their head, of course. But once we come out to the other side of this, perhaps middle of the year, a little bit later, we're going to be back in the same situation we were at the beginning of the year. So I wanted to kind of set the scene for what was our predictions for 20 were, because I think it'll be important in the future. So let's take a look at characteristics of the local market, in this case Lexington. Here's the headline numbers. As the graph shows, we've seen a steady rise in prices all the way up to a median price of just over 1.2 million in 2019, which is 66% rise since the prior peak in 2005. But there's more to that headline number, and so let's dive into some of the details. So this graph shows you the inventory numbers. That is the number of available homes at the beginning of the month. 2 important points in this. 2 important areas in this. The first one is what happened in 2013. We had high inventory in 2010, 11, 12, but then it dropped dramatically in 2013. The reason it dropped dramatically was because of buyer confidence. The buyers came back into the market, they put the recession behind them, and now they were back into the market. It's been carried on like that for a number of years, but look what happened here in 2019. We saw a market rise in inventory levels from what we saw in 18. Guess what? If the reduction was caused by buyer confidence, the rise is caused by a lack of buyer confidence. And that really was what set the scene for 2019, that lack of buyer confidence, because of the perception that there would be a economic downturn in that 2020, 2021 timeframe. So that's what's going on with this graph. This is the recession behind us. This is the potential, not recession, well, as we were talking in January, but the economic downturn that was perceived to be coming. Home sales in Lexington, highest point was 2015, and then it dropped all the way down to 2018. And that was not just a drop in the number of homes that sold, it was also a drop in the number of homes that were listed. Many Lexington buyers deciding to
sellers. I have to keep correcting you. He always gets buyers and sellers mixed up.
I do.
Lexington
It's
sellers.
all about sellers. Almost all about sellers. The sellers decided to stay in place, age in place, if you will. Also, it was difficult for those sellers to find their next home. We'll talk more tomorrow about Arlington, but as they're looking to move into a smaller home, those smaller homes dominated by first-time home buyers, and so it's difficult to buy the next home. So, as you can see from the next graph, the number of homes that are listed, that's the orange line, in comparison to the number of homes that were sold, is starting to diverge. The number of listings is going up. The number of homes that are sold is static. So we're seeing more inventory in 2019, but the number of home sales was relatively static. So that was what characterized the market in actually end of 18 and 2019. And what we anticipated would continue, and to some extent will continue, into 2020. So, median price rose. It's been slowly rising over the last few years. And in fact, if you look behind the headline numbers here in 2019, what you'll see is we saw a change in distribution. A lot more expensive homes, over $2 million homes, sold in 19 than we'd seen previously. And what that did was skew the median, skew the average as well, of course, but it skewed the median. And that's why we saw a rise in the median sale price. In 2019, it's realistically in almost all price points, with perhaps the luxury market over 2 million, we saw relatively flat price appreciation in that 2018-2019 timeframe. So, what's going on? What's driving the market? Actually, what's driving this graph shows you the number of buyers and a number of people. I've got buyers and sellers confused now.
Yeah,
I actually meant to say people. This was the last census, 2015, I think this was done. We'll get some updated numbers given that we all did our census a couple of days ago because we had nothing else to do. This is the number of people by age bracket, and you can see two key areas here. The top yellow bar is the downsizers, the baby boomers, which are now thinking of downsizing. And then the lower bar is the millennials, or the first-time home buyers. What's happening is, if you think about a town like Arlington, many first-time home buyers are looking to move out of their rentals into a home relatively close in. And so Arlington's a great destination. I'll pick Arlington because it's the next town in. And then our downsizers are thinking, I want to downsize into a smaller home. Arlington's got smaller homes. And guess what? It's quite close by as well. And so both those groups were looking to buy into that Arlington market. What that, of course, allowed people in Arlington and other towns to move up the housing ladder and move into Lexington. So the market in Lexington is driven by second-time home buyers, predominantly some first, but predominantly second or third-time home buyers moving into the town, and then downsizers moving out to a smaller home in another town. That's kind of what's dominated the Lexington market. So that's what this graph shows us. So the economic uncertainty was the big talking point. Gosh, no more than 2 months ago, I guess.
Yeah.
It's kind of, that seems like an age ago, but actually in
Even
early February we were talking about the economic uncertainty.
Even a week ago seems like an age ago.
Yeah, it does. And clearly it's still here. But this is really what was dominating our thinking in January, early February this year.
And the latter part of last year too.
Yes, 19 as well as the first month and a half of this year, really. And so if you think about what our predictions for 2020 were, sellers' difficulty buy their new home, clearly, with the...
And that was And
Yep.
all of this was found
That's right,
in
yeah.
the market review that you can find on our website,
Right.
as well as
Yep.
mailed to every Lexington address.
That's all out there. A static number of buyers in the market. We still think that will continue as we move forward, actually. And then we predicted it would be trending more to a more balanced market in Lexington. Certainly not the hot sellers market we've seen previously, but certainly a balanced market. Lest we can forget the economic uncertainty, that's kind of a reality now, of course. Rates remaining static, and so the prediction back in January was that price appreciation would remain static through 2020. So that's kind of the backdrop to where we are today. Clearly, a lot's happened in the last 2 months, I guess. 2 months. So yeah, 2 months,
Mid-February,
right?
we're in
We'll
mid-April.
talk about that in a minute. So lots happened in the last 2 months, but that was kind of where we were. And the reason I wanted to go through that is I think that's important as we think about what will happen in that June, July, August, and moving forward timeframe. So let's take a look at listings. Kind of listings are important now because it's what's happened in terms of people. Sellers putting their home on the market. I think that's kind of key to think about.
And we've got a good handle on this because I wrote this down before. This year so far, even though we're in the middle of April and we haven't bought anything on the market in the last 2 weeks,
right.
We've already bought 22 homes on the market. So we have a pretty good handle on what's going on from a listing perspective around here. So,
and you should say why we brought so many on so early.
We bought so many on so early.
That, right?
Yeah, we did. Well, part of that was we always find that coming on the market in the very beginning of the spring market is always the best time to come on the market, because basically when winter breaks, the buyers are out in force. They're all, because most of the buyers plan over winter when they're hibernating. We're going to buy this year. We're going to move. We're going to buy. Then winter stops, or we start getting a fine weekend. There might still be snow on the ground, but the sun shines out. They're out in force. They want to see what's on the market. Well, at that time of the year, typically there's not too many homes on the market. And the buyer energy is, we need to buy, we need to buy, we need to buy.
Actually, I can show that on this graph.
Yeah, that graph perfectly. You'll find that, and in 2019, actually, we bought a lot of homes on the market early in 2019, which is why we show so many homes coming on in March. We do this each year. And so we bought a lot of homes on the market this year, luckily, thank goodness, because it wasn't until it was about mid-February that the stock market crashed. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up.
Yep.
But when there's not much supply and there's lots of buyers, that's prime candidates for getting a lot of energy in the market for the sellers.
Right, so this is 2019.
Yep.
And as you can see, it ramps up in February, March, April, May, and the peak month of bringing homes on the market is in May, where we just over 70 homes in 2019. This is the spring and fall market kind of shown there in that orange color. So let's take a look at what happened in 2020. January, we saw a few more. Remember, it seems to get like a long time ago, but we had a very mild winter in January. Yep. January, February, and early into March. So a lot more homes came on the market. The blue bar is 2019, the orange bar is 2020.
And we actually began bringing homes on the market the first week in February too, which was about 3 weeks earlier than we would normally, 3 to 4 weeks earlier than we would normally do that.
Right, and you can see that then in the February timeframe, more homes came on the market. I then broke March out because we had the lockdown, or the shelter in place about the middle of the month. So the early part of the month was about the same, 2019 versus 18. But now you can see in the second half of March, and now only 10 days into April, so I haven't got very much data. And it was an Easter weekend last weekend, although not that it meant very much this year in terms of homes coming on. But as you can see that the number of homes that came on the market in 2019 is higher than what's come on the market in 2020. We think that will continue through April.
Yep.
Question is, to what extent will it continue through May? Remembering that May is the peak month for homes coming on the market.
Normally,
right, based on 19.
Yeah.
And so I played with some numbers a little bit, and this is kind of where I think what my projections will be for 2020 listings.
Yeah.
April and May, relatively low. I think I had about 20 homes. We'll see if we even get to that number. What that means, of course, is the sellers still have to sell. They're just waiting for at least some respite in terms of where we are right now. And so what's going to happen is that they're going to put off putting their homes on the market in April and May, but they are going to put it on the market. And that means we'll get an awful lot of homes come on the market in that June, July timeframe. In time for, one assumes, a restart of the school year in that end of August, September timeframe. And so we expect a lot more homes to come on the market in that kind of
once
June.
Things start
Right.
settling down.
Now, whether that's the end of May, whether it's beginning or middle of June, time will tell. But it's kind of in that time frame that we predict so far. So that's kind of where we see the number of homes coming on the market.
And this has serious implications too, if you're planning on selling. So keep that one in mind if you're thinking about selling. We'll talk about that soon.
What I wanted to do was, all the information we've shown you right now has been for Lexington. But if you have interest in any other homes, this is our website.
Any other towns. Sorry.
Any other towns, then there's a tab on our website under real estate. It's called Real Estate Statistics, which will give you information. So I showed you the inventory level graph previously. Here's the inventory level graph, but let's go take a look at it for...
We've got about 40 odd different towns.
Concord, for example.
Yeah.
And there's the inventory level graph for Concord. So there's a lot of information on the website that, feel free to go take a look at it. So not just about Lexington and or Arlington, there's say about 40 different towns on the market. So feel free to go take a look at that. So back to economic future. Is it going to be U? Is it going to be a V-shaped recession? So that's kind of the big question that everybody's asking. We have a little bit of insight into it. There are many, many different scenarios. I was going to show you something that McKinsey put together. Let me give you a quick look at that. This is something that McKinsey put together in terms of the different scenarios they may or may not be. They got really complex with it, but the reality is, for there to be a V-shaped recession, we have to get everything right. And there are certainly a lot more U-shaped recessions. And by a U-shaped recession, what I mean is we go into the trough and it's a slow exit from that trough. A V-shaped recession, we go in, we come right back out again, in 2020, if not by the third quarter of 2020. So looks like there are a lot of scenarios, but most of them have some kind of U-shaped scenario coming through. I say V requires we get everything right, and pretty clearly we haven't done that so far, so I wonder if we're going to do that moving forward. As well as that, of course, the US economy is predominantly service-based, and that's been hit very hard. Restaurants, for example. I mean, when will restaurants be able to open? A lot of people are able to work from home, including ourselves.
I think they're saying with restaurants, they predict that 50% of the restaurants that were in existence before this are probably not going to come out of it, which is
that's a huge
dramatic.
number if you think about it. Big number. Working from home, we're doing it, as of many, many people. I showed some buyers today. We were absolutely okay to go see a home at 11 o'clock this morning because they were working from home. But clearly 16 million was the last number that we saw, and my guess is that within a week or two that will be well over 20 million people are not able to work from home and have been either laid off or furloughed. And many small businesses will not survive. There's also the thought that this disease, COVID-19, is here for the long haul. And depending on how we exit from it, it's going to come back to a lesser or greater degree. So everything points to a U-shaped recession. So that recession lasting through 20 all the way through into 2021.
And how that impacts real estate is why we're here tonight talking about this, because it's not going to be, it's solved and it's out again. It's going to be here for a while. So here are the things to consider as we're going into it, if you're thinking about buying or selling.
So
I like jumping in when I can now.
I know you can. It used to be easy when we were in a conference room because Danny would be sat right at the back just going, this is how long I took. So now she's right next to me, even though you can't see her.
Yeah, they can see it.
That's right. But they don't know they're next to each other. So
They do, because the painting
the
behind us
painting
is
is the
the
same.
same
The
one.
painting is the
Yes.
same. The painting is the
People are
same.
smarter than that, dear.
Okay. All right. There we go.
Okay, keep going.
All right. So lending. So there's a good news and bad news with lending. Interest rates are low and clearly will continue to be low. There's no, the best we can see there. They could get even lower, but it doesn't look like we're going to see any rise. Even the predictions in January were that it was going to be static through the rest of 2020. But what we are beginning to hear, and some of it a little anecdotal, but that banks are beginning to tighten their lending. Higher credit scores being required, more scrutiny about loan to value. I hear today, just talking to a buyer, that there were more restrictions on jumbo loans. So clearly the banks are beginning to think, what if this is a long-term recession, longer-term recession? What if house prices, perhaps don't rise, maybe even go down? I don't want to be left with a home where the buyer has got 5% down and either bank have got 95%. I mean, they clearly don't want to be left in that situation. So they're beginning to tighten those. So it's kind of a good picture on one hand. On the other hand, it's not such a good picture. Clearly, other people that are furloughed today actually going to be let go in the future. So a lot of uncertainty, and the banks beginning to tighten kind of what they're looking for in terms of lending. In terms of the buyers, a couple of major events are worth taking a look at. Again, it seems like a long time ago, but if I show you what the Dow Jones looked like, it's quite interesting. This is the Dow Jones for the last 3 months. The crash, if we can call it that, when it started to drop quite dramatically, was back in mid-February. What happened when that crash occurred didn't really affect the first-time home buyers, but
the sub $1 million mark.
Right, it really affected though the higher-priced homes. People were perhaps moving up. They were going to take money out of the stock market to finance their purchase, and all of a sudden, what they found is to get money out of the stock market essentially became 30% more expensive, and so they felt they were paying too much for the home. So we had a number of situations where people exited from contracts because that they felt that the stock market crash had reduced their net wealth.
And as we mentioned, we bought on 22 homes so far this year already, and we probably had 3 or 4 fall apart just before purchase and sale, because it was right when the stock market was crashing and people the uncertainty was just too much for them.
Right. So that was kind of mid-Feb. It seems like a long time ago. It was actually only 2 months ago. What happened then is in that mid-March timeframe, we had the lockdown, shelters in place, working from home, and so on. Now, clearly, that was in mid-March. That had a much wider impact, and we saw that affecting all price points. And so both first-time home buyers as well as more affluent buyers, both seeing that they didn't know what the future meant. And so we saw many buyers exiting, both home buyers and investors, in fact. So both were investing. You would think that now, with static prices and sort of the uncertainty in the market, would be a good time for investors. But investors thinking, so what's the rental picture going to look like in the next 6 to 12 months? So we had some investors that actually exited as well. And we also had the spectre of the home inspection.
Ooh,
Danny loves these,
have
by the
way. So just remember that we've been through many, many years where 50% of the offers that came in a competing offer situation didn't have home inspections. So we've gotten a little used to not having home inspections. Unfortunately, this year, home inspections are back, and they will continue to be back. And unfortunately, they've been really, really tough. The buyers planning on using them as a price reduction tactic. You might sort of say that it's information only, and then they come back and ask for money off. And they've been very, very contentious, unfortunately. I'm not enjoying that part of it, but
I guess what I would perhaps add to this slide as well is this is major events for buyers. Even though we've been through clearly a major event, many sellers still think it's nothing's happened. They think it's business as usual. They're still thinking, well, why shouldn't I get high prices for my homes? And clearly that isn't the case. And so there is definitely a discrepancy between the way buyers are thinking and the way not all sellers clearly, but many sellers are thinking. Buyers seeing it as a much bigger event than many sellers are.
Yeah.
So thinking about, this kind of buyer versus seller. Buyers thinking, well, maybe I should put this off to 2021. Maybe prices will be lower in 2021.
And sellers, and I talk to sellers all the time, I'm hearing both sides of the coin. I'm hearing people talk about, well, maybe I should sell now just in case the prices are lower next year. And then I'm also getting people say, well, I don't think I should sell this year. I think I should wait until 2021 when the prices will be higher. So it's very, very, the uncertainty with sellers as to whether they should wait or act now is very, very, it's out there.
Yeah, and a marked difference between the two.
Yep.
And that isn't, realistically, this is not going to end well. If we've got the two groups thinking differently, it doesn't necessarily over for it ending very well. So, selling in 2020.
Yeah. So
when do you do it and how do you do it?
Well, selling in 2020, we did phrase it along the lines of what would sellers who were thinking about selling in 2020 or who were planning on selling in 2020, what are their questions? What would their questions be right now? And we came down to, and I should mention, if you've got any questions, please add them to the stream that you're on, because we are on 3 different platforms. We're on Facebook, Twitch, and also YouTube. But add the questions in there, and we'll address them at the end, because we will get to them as well. But the questions that we identified potentially are, well, when and how. So let's cover when first. I think I'm going to let you talk about this graph, but I'll jump in. He's the graph person. I can help with this too.
Yeah,
this is Marcus and I coming up with him actually graphing.
Yeah, what does it kind of look like? If we time on the bottom axis and the number and the number and the way showings are done, the number of ways showings are done on the vertical axis.
And can we point out the open house? It came to a certain point and
grinding halt.
Fell off the thing. We stopped doing open houses, I believe it was the 2nd or 3rd week in March. Actually, it was the 3rd week in March. Basically, open houses stopped, because I'm just looking at my list. We bought a home on the market mid-March. It had an open house. The following weekend, we didn't have an open house. And so...
dropped off.
Yeah.
So what we saw, as well as the open houses drop, is we saw an increase in the number of virtual showings, if you like. And by that, what we mean is people looking at, in the case of our listings, videos, photographs, of course, 3D tours, the website, our website traffic for our single property websites. We create a website for every property that we bring on the market. The traffic to those websites was always around 200-300. It just went through the roof.
Skyrocketed.
Everybody was looking at the website and those digital assets, if you like, to decide whether they should look at the home.
Make a private showing, because if they fell in love with the home, they were spending all of their time researching the home online and then making the decision, well, yes, I'm scared about going out, but this home's something that I think it's worth me going out and taking that risk to go and have a look at it. So having those private showings, we used to have an interesting model, if you like, not a demographic. Split. We used to have a lot of people coming to the first weekend's open houses. Huge amounts of people coming to first weekend's open houses. Not as many private showings, because basically the buyers would think, well, there's an open house, I'll go to the open house instead, see whether I like the home. And then if they did, they might come back with their agent another day. But when this started happening, we were getting fewer and fewer people through the open houses and many, many, many more private showings of a home. So it really did sort of change about mid-March. And then...
So the number of private showings dropped, and I think the way I would characterize the number of private showings is this group here are the number of serious buyers who are willing to go out, but serious. We used to have private showings before. They would just go and have a look because they thought it might work for them. Now they're doing everything online, and only if it ticks all the boxes and they've been able to get access to all of the information, at that point they'll go and make a private showing. At some point, clearly this situation has to change. What we think we put mid to end of May. It depends on, Danny's a little bit more
I'm a little bit more
bearish.
buoyant.
I have been a bit more,
Well, I
I don't know.
believe, and I hate to get into the morbid stuff here, but I think buyers are hunkering down at the moment. Sellers are hunkering down as well. We're all hunkering down, and we're all watching. And I hate to say it, the death rates. How bad is this getting? I mean, we know in Massachusetts they're talking about, the 20th of April will be, the peak of all of this. I believe once the buyers start seeing the death rates going down, over a period of 7 days, they'll start thinking we're on the other side of it. Now we should go out and start looking at homes again, because now we're sort of okay. Because I mean, it's like New York at the moment. New York they're talking about their plateau and they're going down the other side, and now they're even talking about opening up the economy and things. So I don't think it's going to take long after those numbers start reducing that we start seeing the buyers out and about. And luckily, I get a question quite often is, how are we going to know when the buyers are out starting to look again? And one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit further on is vacant homes are golden at the moment. And we have some vacant homes on the market. The more showings we start getting of those vacant homes, we'll know that the buyers are out again. Even if other agents who don't have listings, maybe they won't know that the activity has picked up again, and we'll have a little bit of an advantage of that for our next homes to come on. We'll know when it's starting to change. Did I ramble then?
Probably yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Usually you do, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Usually
Don't call me sweetheart on this.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yes, Danny.
Yes, that's
Is that
better.
better? Is that
Yes,
better?
it's more professional.
Okay, there we go. So, sometime mid-end of May, let's see, I mean, time will tell, of course, we'll see buyer confidence beginning to return and get back to the level it was perhaps previously, maybe not quite as many buyers willing to buy, essentially. But those that are willing to buy, their confidence will be back and they'll be back in the market. And then at some point moving forward, many virtual showings will begin to decline as more people will be actually get some willingness to go into the home. So that's kind of how we're going to lay that out. And I think it's interesting to look at those two different periods, that lockdown and buyer confidence returns, and think about, well, so as a seller,
Yeah, this is important for sellers.
right, how do I do it between now and, let's say, the end of May, and how do I do it in that end of May,
June, July, and
onwards?
August? Because even though once the buyer confidence returns, we still have to be cognizant of the fact that they say that this thing's going to be with us at least until mid-2021, when potentially we'll have some vaccines there. So there's still some concerns with that both sellers will have concerns and buyers will have concerns, which is how we're going to explain those moving forward as to what we think real estate would look like.
Okay, how?
Yeah, the how. That's where we go. So let's talk about in general first, and how we've characterized this is vacant home and occupied home. They're going to be handled differently moving forward for the foreseeable future, a vacant home and an occupied home. But in general, for both of those, there's going to be no open houses. We're just not seeing that that's going to change anytime soon. No physical feature sheets. Even in the last couple of weekends of open houses happening, we were having buyers not wanting to take feature sheets from us because we were touching them. So I think what we have been doing, not planning on doing, is we have virtual feature sheets online where the buyers can go and get that information. So we're still creating the feature sheets. We're just keeping them online for them on the website and attached to MLS. Marketing is going to be all virtual. Luckily, we've been doing virtual marketing. We've been doing 3D tours with our own equipment for 5 years, 6 years.
5 years.
And very few agents have been doing that. They're starting to do it now, but we've been doing it for something like 5 years or so. Videos. I think we have some statistics for Lexington last year in 2019. There were only 4% 4% of the homes that
4%.
came, actually, and that's the same for 3D tours as well. There were only 4% of the homes that came on the market last year in the whole of Lexington. Only 4% of them had a video or a 3D tour, and we do them for 100% of our homes. So we are positioned perfectly for this, with a website as well, and floor plans and those things. We would recommend that Massachusetts is a voluntary disclosure state. You do not need to fill in a seller's disclosure. We probably find 40% of sellers fill it in, 60% don't. We would recommend, while this is still happening, that our sellers complete a seller's disclosure. And we'll explain why as we get further into this. But a seller's disclosure gives buyers warm and fuzzies. They're not going to be having the same sort of access that they would normally have seen into a home during the next phase of real estate while coronavirus is around. So a seller's disclosure will give them a lot more warm and fuzzies. And the buyer's behaviour, I believe, is going to continue how it's been the last few weeks, which is massively virtually checking out a home, which is why it's critical that you have these digital marketing mechanisms there. And only if they fall in love with the home of what they've seen virtually will they make a private showing. So across, whether we're talking about a vacant home or an occupied home, those are the key things across all of those. Now we get on to, again, we mentioned it, vacant versus occupied. So this during the lockdown phase, I anticipate it's going to go the rest of April, probably part way into May. A vacant home is relatively straightforward. If you've got a vacant home, as I said, it's golden. The preparation phase, because we should talk about, we go back to the fundamentals that exist with getting the highest price for the home. The fundamentals are smart decisions, and we've talked about, components of that. Preparation, staging, marketing, and teamwork. So let's talk about how some of these things will change during this lockdown phase for vacant. We are finding that contractors are still willing to go into vacant homes. Now, a lot of contractors don't have much business at the moment. We're talking painters, flooring people. We're talking landscapers. We can't even get our landscapers to come.
Anyway, we got a water heater replaced in less than 24 hours this weekend.
Yeah, which is just amazing.
It's taken 2-3 days in normal times.
So the contractors are looking for work. So they're very willing to be in a vacant home. The staging that we offer, we can do full staging of a vacant home. In fact, we're doing one on Friday. It's a no-brainer. It's easy. It's a no-brainer. The marketing.
Relatively straightforward.
Yeah, relatively.
I know who's doing it.
Yeah, we're doing it. The marketing is virtual. That's going to remain the same for all of them. The showings, we have got restricted showings occurring, and this is more so that this is something that's been brought down. They don't want overlapping private showings. We're not doing open houses, again, as we were saying, but the non-overlapping showings where there's only a buyer's agent and the buyers in the home at any one point in time. And closings are all being done virtually. They have those processes done, and they're happening. Did you have anything more you wanted to talk about with vacant? Okay.
No.
Now let's talk about how that changes for the occupied homes.
Because it's a lot more difficult.
Oh yeah, this is a lot more difficult. This is a lot more difficult.
Spend a lot of time worrying about this one.
So the preparation. Look, contractors are very, very unwilling to be in occupied homes. I heard the other day that someone had a problem with their Comcast, and the homeowners had to leave the house while the person was in working on their Comcast. So this is just across the board. People do not want to be in a house that's occupied where someone's there. So getting a painter to come in, that's going to be more of a challenge. It'll be okay if it's outside work, exterior work, but the interior is what the buyers really respond to. So, and that's the key one there with the preparation phase. Staging. We're going to be limiting, during this lockdown, we're going to be limiting this to soft furnishings only. Soft furnishings means, well, I shouldn't say only here. Soft furnishings means your throws, your pillows, bedding, those sorts of things, where we can actually come up with a staging plan virtually for you. We can pull those sort of components, pop them in big plastic bags, and then leave them at your front door or around the back or something like that. When you feel comfortable bringing them inside, then we can guide you over the phone, FaceTime, that sort of thing, and where to put them around the home. And then the marketing is virtual. We probably should, yeah, we'll cover the staging in the post lockdown phase. Showings very, very restricted. Look, there are even some towns around Massachusetts which are banning showings of homes. Occupied homes. They're banning them. So that hasn't happened in Lexington yet, but it has happened in a number of towns fairly close by. If it's going to happen in Lexington, we don't know how the towns can do that legally. I'm not really sure. That's not. Yep. And again, the closings are virtual. Did you want to say anything more about that? Yep. Okay. So when the buyer confidence returns, let's talk about the vacant homes again. When the buyer confidence returns, again, the contractors, they're willing to be in the vacant homes. That hasn't changed. The staging hasn't changed. The marketing hasn't changed. The showings, it becomes less restricted. We believe that there will be increasing numbers of buyers wanting to get into the home, and less concern if a buyer group's in there and another buyer group's there, so long as they're in other parts of the house. I think there'll be less concern about that. And virtual closings again. Now, buyer confidence returns with occupied homes. So we wanted to talk about this in a progressive, because it's awfully different. It's awfully different what it will be if we're talking about the first weekend in May, and the buyers we've shown some activity with the buyers, and a seller wants to come on the market and wants full staging. That first weekend in May, the staging that we'd be willing to do is an awful lot different to the staging that we'd be willing to do in the middle of November, because by then things will have settled down a lot. So when we sort of say this progressively willing to come into homes, it's the same with contractors. It might take a while for the plumbers to get a little bit more confidence going into a home to do some work, or a kitchen company, or that sort of thing. Same with the staging. We'll be progressively willing to fully stage, because one of the considerations that a lot of folks may not be aware of, when we stage a home, we're bringing in, if bedside tables will be, each home is different, but some homes need an awful lot more furniture than others do. And so if we're bringing in lamps, if we're bringing in bowls to go on the dining room table, if we're bringing in surfaces that have that are glass or metal or plastic, they're talking about the fact that this virus will live on those surfaces for 3 days or so. So, okay, that's great. If we're going into a home to stage a home and we're having to move a couple of your pieces of furniture, well, now we're exposing ourselves, the movers as well as the stagers and the agents, and to actually stage your home. Then your home's on the market, and then your home goes under agreement. Fantastic. We typically don't take out staging, staging components until after purchase and sale. Well, okay, after purchase and sale, how do we take out our staging things if it's being used up until the day of staging? At the moment, we're asking for a 3-day, that there be no one in the home for 3 days prior to us coming into stage. And when it's time for us to destage, no one's been in the home for 3 days. We have prepared a graphic that shows that, but I have to say that this is changing on a fairly rapid basis. So this is why we're saying progressively, because in 2 months' time it might be completely different to what it is now, and that sort of stuff. So again, the marketing is virtual, and the showings again will be progressively less restricted, with closings virtual as well. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, good. So again, just to reiterate, what the components of the market is going to look like, we believe, is the lockdown phase, which is really the shelter in place. It's, shelter in place may still continue for a while after the buyer confidence returns, but we found that there were still buyers willing to go out and look at homes even after the shelter in place advisory was in place. So we're talking about those two different time periods.
And then I think we summarized it as best we could in a good old-fashioned business school 2x2 matrix, just to give you a sense of lockdown, vacant, buyer confidence returns, vacant, and so on. So just kind of summarizing all of that information together in one place, so that you can get a sense of what we can and cannot do, and clearly that.
And how things change, because, for instance, if you look at the lockdown, which is the top two, and on the left-hand side you've got vacant, and on the right-hand side you've got occupied. Well, you can see, even with the lockdown, if the home is vacant, it's easy. It's pretty easy. It's really, really tough when it's an occupied home. We should also clarify that what some of our sellers are doing, if they've got a second home or they've got a home that they can move into temporarily, they're moving out of their home. They're leaving all of their belongings, obviously still there, but they're moving out. We then treat that as a vacant home, and we market that in MLS and all of the different places that we can market a home. We market that the seller has temporarily vacated the home to allow for safer showing for buyers. And that has been huge. We see such a difference between the number of showings of a vacant home, which we don't talk about it in marketing as being vacant. We're telling you it's vacant, but we don't talk about it in marketing as being vacant, because that's, a little bit from a security perspective. But we see a huge difference in the number of showings we have of a vacant home versus an occupied home. So we wanted to put that together
in one place, yeah. So
in one place.
See how it works.
Yeah. So what we're going to see, what Marcus was talking about in the graphs beforehand and things, remembering that there's not many homes coming on the market in April. We've only had 10 in Lexington come on the market this month so far, and we're the 14th of April. So that's only 10 homes in April so far. Those homes that would have come on in April or in May are going to be coming on in probably June or July. So we're going to get a whole lot more homes coming on the market. Those homes that are coming on the market are going to be chasing the buyers who are out there, because even though the buyers, we need to clarify, there are still sellers who want to sell and there are buyers who want to buy. But we're going to have less numbers of buyers, because let's face it, there's 16 million now, 20 million now that are unemployed, lost their jobs. There's still going to be a lot of uncertainty moving forward, because even if they haven't lost their job now and they've been working from home, if we go back into, this COVID, the coronavirus is a cyclical thing, because if they open up the economy too quickly, it's going to go back into being critical again. So what if those buyers lose their jobs in the second go round? So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. We think a lot of buyers may choose that maybe until things start settling down, maybe it's not a really good time to be buying.
True, and we'll shift. If you remember what I said at the beginning, in January we predicted we were going to be in a balanced market, which is moving away from the seller's market we saw in 18. So 19 was more balanced. We'd anticipated 20 would be more balanced, with that increasing number of these not so much increasing number of listings, but the listings being compressed into a relatively small period of time and less buyers in the market. What that means is we're going to shift now from being a balanced market to a buyer's market. And having that happened, what now we have to focus on is back to the critically important things that you need to focus on. What does it take in this market where you've got many sellers, not that many buyers? What does it take to get that maximum sale price? And that comes back to what we've been saying all along, really. It's around what we've talked about so far, smart decisions, thinking through when is the right time to bring a home on the market based on the market conditions. How do you prepare the home? Preparation services, staging services, that marketing, increasingly less marketing, more digital marketing. And then how do you wrap that up with teamwork around the outside of that to kind of take it forward and bring that package forward?
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit. Well, what do we mean by preparation services? Now, I just need to qualify. This is not a typical seminar that we do for the sellers. We just want to gloss over things quickly. We just want to go fairly quickly through this about the differences that we'll find. So the preparation services. We do virtual consultations. I did one just today, this morning. Someone who's thinking about selling, we FaceTimed each other, and she walked me around the home, we talked about a whole lot of components, and we talked about the things that would give her the highest ROI, projects that would make sense doing. But I also talked about projects not worth doing. Don't do this. The buyers are not going to pay any more if you do X, Y, and Z. So virtually we can do this relatively straightforward. And we have one of our full-time support folks, who is Susan. She's awesome. She helps us. Her nickname is our contractor whisperer. So she can help coordinate getting quotes for work being done, coordinate the contractors. And as we progress further into, safer territory, she'll be at the house on a regular basis, overseeing what's going on in conjunction with the seller. She works quite closely with the sellers in that. Right. So the preparation services, we can still do this as we move forward. It's going to be a progressive opening up of that, because we do need the contractors. The contractors, do need to be doing that. Again, vacant homes, easy. Occupied homes, it's a little challenging at the moment. Here's a couple. We've just got a couple of examples. Wallpaper on walls doesn't appeal to buyers, and the whole thing with doing this is trying to get the maximum impact for your home with the few buyers that are out there. So the difference with wallpaper versus just solid paint. The difference, the buyers don't like wood kitchens anymore, I'm afraid to say. We find a dramatic difference between painting a kitchen from the wood to the paint. This actual house was one that it came on the market with a different agent a year ago and didn't sell. And the sellers contacted us, and we came in and got them to paint the kitchen and paint one of the bathroom cabinets, and obviously staged the home and marketed it. And it didn't sell with the other agent, and we got competing offers for the home. So it makes a huge difference, the preparation, just knowing what impacts the buyers and the buyers are willing to spend money on. Here's one that a lot of folks don't realize is that the old dated tiles, the orange tiles or the blue tiles or the green tiles, often with a black trim around the top of them, that can be painted really easily, and the wallpaper down. And you can see in the after, we did nothing to spend money on that bathroom apart from paint, and it makes a difference because the finished product, the buyers feel that they can just walk in, unpack and use this and think that they're going to upgrade the bathroom in the next few years, but it's usable and everything now, so they will pay more money for that. Staging services. Again, this is a virtual consultation. Our staging coordinator was on the phone with someone today that's planning on coming on, talking about the different things that they should be doing around the home. Part of a key thing with the staging is that we want you to depersonalize your home and declutter it. And that's all stuff that, hey, everyone's at home at the moment. So get some boxes out and start packing things away.
Declutter my office.
No,
Yeah.
you're too
busy.
busy.
You can declutter yours.
No. We're not planning on selling. That's okay. But it's a good opportunity to start putting away the things that you actually don't need and putting them in organized boxes and putting them down in the basement or putting them in the garage, wherever. But just starting to get a few things going makes it a lot easier. The staging is performed by our in-house professional stagers. We have a full-time stager, we have part-time stagers, and we have our own moving truck. We probably should put a picture of our moving truck on this. But each home...
It should be on a website. I'll show it on a website.
We should have it, yeah, okay.
You should talk to Glenn about that.
Okay.
Glenn, we would like a picture of our
job for
truck.
you, Glenn, if you're on, we need to... and the staging furniture and accessories is based on particular need. As we mentioned, in this phase now, where we're in the lockdown phase, we'll provide soft furnishings. We start moving out of that, we'll get more into the full-blown staging, unless it's a vacant home. A vacant home, we're still fully staging it right now. And they progressively lift the restrictions. And this is where I think I mentioned it before, but we get a lot of sellers deciding to move out while their home's on the market, because if we've done everything right, when the home comes on the market and we review offers on the Monday or the Tuesday, if the seller's out of the home during that time, then you can come home because we've gotten offers on your home. So it's not moving out of your home for 3 months. That's not what we're talking about. And we're just going to...
Our latest iteration.
Yes.
Which we seem to change it on
it does change.
Twice a week.
It doesn't change that often. But this is an example of, we are trying to come up with mechanisms where if someone wants to come on the market now and they're living in their home, here's the sorts of things that we might need them to do, which is, moving out of their home on the Thursday, and then we'll come in and stage, moving their furniture around, things like this, and doing the digital assets, coming on the market, reviewing the offers. If we don't have an inspection, we can be at purchase and sale fairly quickly, and then we can destage on the Monday, the seller can move back in on the Tuesday. We have to throw in the caveat that we're starting to see a lot more inspections now, so it might be a longer period of time that the seller needs to be out of the house. So this is where we're trying to give people a sense of what could be if they live in their home and they want to come on the market now, before we start seeing the buyers coming back in early to mid-May. Well, maybe not early, mid-May.
Mid-May. Or end of May.
But we have this, and if you want, we have this for vacant homes. We also have this for no staging of occupied homes, so we can send it to you if you like. Here's an example. This is the same home. This was a home that another agent had tried selling a year before or so. The home didn't sell, came off the market. We then came in and staged the home, and we had competing offers on the home. This is because the buyers can visualize how their life would be if they lived in the home with staging furniture in it. This one's more powerful. This one is a series of just these two photos. This one was a for sale by owner, not selling. Then it was an agent had it on the market for about a year, and then it was a for sale by owner again, and then the seller contacted us, and we came in and staged it, and we had competing offers the first weekend. But if you have a look at this, if you can see here, you've got, this is the front of the house, there's the living room, there's the dining room, and now what's this room? The buyers would have walked through this series of 3 rooms thinking,
Big dining room.
no, it didn't work as a big dining room.
Oh, really?
But it would have caused, I don't know what to do with this room. And as soon as you've got a unique layout, that's the death knell for it. So what we did is we came in and we staged the front room as a living room, staged the middle room as the dining room, which it was, because you can see there's a chandelier here. And this room at the back here, we staged that as a pre or post dinner drinks area where the guests could either sit and have a drink before dinner or sit and have an after dinner drink. So, you know, we had a bar and a bar set up. But as I say, this home, you know, after being on the market for about a year and a half, we had competing offers on it. So it's just letting the buyers see, and that's the power of staging. So, marketing, or in today's terms, digital marketing.
Everything's digital. For us, this has not really been a big difference. If you think about what we were doing to homes previously, we were clearly taking photographs, professional photographs. We were doing multiple videos of a home, 3D tours, floor plans, and so on. And actually, let me give you a sense of what we were doing previously. We've changed the website less than we've changed what we actually put on the multiple listing service. Now on the multiple listing service, we actually put the property brochure too. We didn't used to do that. People used to pick that up at the open house. But what we do in terms of the
oh, and this was a home. This is one that we were talking about. This one came on in mid-March. And mid-March, we had competing offers on the home. We had two offers on the home, even at the $1.7 million price point, which, remember, we were saying the stock market crash in mid-February impacted the higher priced homes. So we luckily we got in before it all sort of fell apart. Although we didn't, because it was mid-March when it came on. So
mid-March, just at the kind of peak time when sheltering
everything
place, happened. Exactly.
Yeah.
So clearly, high quality photographs, lots of information. Remembering today's buyers are potentially not going into the home unless it ticks all of the boxes. So we need to do everything we possibly can to tick all those boxes. So that's lots of information, a narrative about the home. Photographs, you can see here, this is the living room of this home, and so it goes on as you kind of walk them through the home. You want them to think, visualize what it would be like in the home, walking in the home, going around the different rooms as if they're kind of in the home itself. So lots of photographs. There's the kitchen, there's the large dining room, family room. Thank you. Massive office.
Yeah.
That's a huge office, by the way. Anyway, so lots of photographs and narrative about the home so they can get a sense of visualization of what the home would look like. Once we've done that, then we go look at the 3D tour.
And we've had these for 5 years or so. We own our own equipment. We bought it 5 years ago, so we do this for every single home. And
so this is a way for a potential buyer to virtually walk around the home. A video is somewhat canned. We do those too, and I'll show you that in a minute. But a 3D tour allows the buyer to do whatever they want to do. They're not navigating you.
I am. I'm going to navigate. He hates it when I do this.
Because you're not very good, that's right.
See, look, but you can look up. Oh, there's 2 skylights. You can look around. What's going on? Okay, you can go over to the other end here and then turn around and say, oh, look, there's the mudroom. So it allows a buyer to walk around the home as if they're in the home. But even better than that, I love, is the
Yeah,
dollhouse view. Because
this only works for small homes.
the dollhouse view, look, you can sort of see the living room is above the pool room, which is, there's a bedroom above. So you can see where things pan out or play out with this home. And you can also do a floor plan with the furniture in it. So it adds scale to the room. Oh, you want to drive?
No, I don't want to drop. I just want to change it so that we just see, for example, floor 2.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Floor 2.
So now you can see that there's a whole lot of hardwoods around this home. So it gives you this perspective, the perspective of how big the home is compared to the furniture in the home.
A video. Guess what? We do videos for all our homes. In many cases, multiple videos for our home. You can see this one here. It tells you all about, in this case, 7 Apollo, outside, inside. So this is a more canned view of how we perceive you walk through the home. The other one is very much up to the buyers to do whatever they want to do. So this gives them, again, a different perspective on that home. So there's the videos. We could do that. Canine Super Sleuth, but not
We
today.
could, yeah. Actually, is it for Apollo? Oh, 21 Locust. Yeah, do that. Just click on that. One of the videos that we do is Pseudo the Canine Super Sleuth, where, our dog, I don't know where he is at the moment, he has a GoPro on his back, and he goes and has a look around the home for his dog clients. And we are amazed how many people share this video with their friends, and selling a home is all about exposure. We had 6 offers for this home. This one came on mid-February. Where's the human gone with the treat? Maybe he's up here. Glenn, you're really good at these.
Anyway, there we
Glenn's
go.
our marketing dude.
Right, back to
Yep.
So this one, as well as that, the property brochure. Remembering, the people are no longer printing property brochures because buyers don't necessarily want to pick them up at the open houses or have no opportunity to pick them up, but they can go on the website and they can print the property brochure. It has the floor plan, photos, information about what's happening with the market, and so on. So all that kind of information that the people want, and we finish it off with, guess what? Where is the home in relation to things that are around it? So we do that too. So this is a one-stop shop, if you like, for all the information about the home. And this is essentially all they will look at. So it's very important that we have that, because that's likely all they will ever look at. So what else do we do?
Social media marketing. Social media is huge. Buyers don't go on Facebook to search for homes, but most of the buyers who are looking for a home are on Facebook. So if they see an ad pop up, a coming soon or a just listed, because we're not just putting them on our Facebook page, we're doing ad campaigns for them on our Facebook page and getting them out to as many buyers or as many people as we can. Obviously, we're not pushing it in California, because a California buyer is not necessarily going to be the main buyer pool for the home. In Lexington, we'll push it out about 20 miles outside of Lexington. So
I like to think of social media as a broad push. And having pushed it out to a broad number of people, then of course what we need to do is focus on putting it out to the right people and targeted with a targeted email campaign.
So we tailored this is where things change a little bit differently, because we're not going to be doing open houses for the foreseeable future. But guess what? Every single buyer who's been to an open house that we've done in the last 5 years in the town, we've got their information in our database, with which home they've come to as well. So what we do is we send out targeted emails to anyone who's who came to an open house in a certain price range of a future home that's coming on the market. We'll let those buyers know that it's coming soon. We let them know that it's just listed. If there's a price adjustment, or the home of the week, those sorts of things. So we do get that information out there, and that's targeted email marketing. That's letting those buyers know who are specifically looking in that price range in that town, know about this home that's coming on the market. So, the whole thing, remembering what the focus is at the moment, we've been doing this for years as well, but remembering that the focus of the marketing is, regardless of whether it's a seller's market, a balanced market, or a buyer's market, the focus of all of our marketing is to get the maximum number of buyers through a home. Because the more buyers that come into a home, the more chance we've got of more than one buyer wanting to buy that home and having competing offers on the home and getting a higher price for the sellers. So even in a buyer's market, we've got to get your home out there to as many people as we can, and that's going to get you the highest price. So, excellence through teamwork. We're only just going to talk about this really, really briefly. As you can see, the client
Talk about buyers then.
Yeah, we will in a sec.
Okay.
I'm just going to do this.
Okay, go for it.
The client's the focus of everything that we do. Actually, whether it be buyers or sellers, but in this particular graphic, this is talking about sellers, because we're talking about the preparation, we're talking about the staging, we're talking about the marketing, the agent, the listing coordination, and the closing coordination. Our central focus is our seller. That's who we're there for. So,
Sure.
Yep. So, buying in 2020, again, what are buyers thinking about?
So we've seen this one before.
About when and how.
When and how. And guess what? We've seen this graph before.
Funny about that.
I did it. It looks pretty good, I think.
You did it today.
Did I? No, yeah, probably.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, probably. So again, those two periods of lockdown where there's a lack of buyer confidence, and then that period mid-end May, whenever that is, when the buyer confidence will return. So how do you do it? It's pretty clear that showings are very restrictive right now. In fact, some towns are preventing showings of occupied homes, so making it very, very difficult to get in to see that home. We've also had situations where some buyer's agents are simply not accompanying showings. Last weekend, I had to open the front door of a home for a buyer where the buyer's agent would not
refuse to show the home.
What that means, of course, is that the information that buyer is getting about the home is minimal. It's minimal, essentially. They're not getting the information they expect. Be prepared for scary situations. One of our agents, probably 2-3 weeks ago now, walked into a home which we expected was to be vacant, or at least to be unoccupied, to find there were actually people in some of the bedrooms. So be prepared for those. And so it makes sense, of course, that gloves and masks are required. I was in a vacant home this morning, but you don't know how many people have been through that home. You're clearly not the only one, and so there is that worry as you're walking through. What do you touch? You've always got that kind of. At least I had this thought that you want to be there. You want to be showing you things. You want to be opening doors. You want to be, showing what's in the attic. You want to be doing that, but then there is in the back of your mind, well, I wonder who else has done
the risk associated.
Right. So, gloves and masks. Safety first. Clearly, in all of this time, and so you've got a range of different options today. Almost everything is virtual. I mean, that's the key. Let's face it.
Well, yes. Some homes have less virtual than others.
They do.
Some listings have less
Sometimes
virtual.
you just get a video, and the video you think, that doesn't really cut it for me. Doesn't really cut it for me, that's for sure.
Having video, sometimes they have 10 photos.
Right. You see a seller's disclosure. You can do all of the virtual products, be it the 3D tour, the video, the photos, whatever it may or may not. But in some instances, they're simply not allowing private showings. So you're expected to make an offer on a home, not quite sight unseen, but certainly not physically seen it, before you make that offer. If you are successful, you are then allowed in with an inspector, we'll talk about the inspections in a minute, to look at that home. We've thought about this a lot, and we're just not sure very many buyers are going to do that. They will clearly in very, very hot towns.
Yeah.
But if you think
If
about
you're in Cambridge or something where there's,
perhaps,
there's
not that many.
potentially could work. It's not going to work in a lot of other towns around
Yeah,
us.
I don't. And if you remember what we said at the beginning, in Lexington, we're going from a balanced market tending now towards a buyer's market. That's not an environment where we think buyers are willing to buy a home, not quite sight unseen, but pretty close.
Sight unseen.
Yeah, given that the breadth of digital marketing that you see today, varies from photos to some have video. A few have 3D tours, but it's certainly not the full gamut. And then the other option, of course, is virtual plus restricted private showings. That's where we are today. Hopefully you can get in for an extended period of time. I mean, there is this thought that if you've only got a relatively small window before the next group comes in, you really want to spend time. I spent an hour in a home this morning, vacant home with a buyer this morning. That was what they needed to look around the home, talk about all the different things to make them feel confident enough to write an offer. In many cases, that just isn't the case. So be prepared for those restrictive showings because they're clearly here. Restricted inspections. We've had some instances where inspectors were not allowing the buyer to attend. So you'll get a report at the end, you'll get photos, maybe you'll get a video and a photo consultation. So you're not really getting...
Consultation, sorry.
What did I say?
Photo.
Oh, I said phone. Yeah, but we have phone. Phone consultation. Sorry, I didn't mean to use the wrong word.
Yes, I know, but yeah, I'm just correct.
I know.
But I want to add to this as well, is that can cause...
Careful, I'm going to
that can create really difficult inspection contingencies or inspection responses. I had one just last week where the buyers didn't go into the home and they were just using the inspector's report. And instead of talking to the inspector about what are the major things in that inspection report, they were asking for, I'm sorry, but they were asking for downspout extenders off the downspouts, and a plug in a sink was broken. They were asking for everything off the inspection report instead of asking for the key things, the big ticket items or the major things that they were concerned about. But the buyer wasn't with the inspector, so they didn't know which were the main things. They were just reading it off a report. So
that's tough. That's going to make for tough inspection contingencies moving forward.
Yep.
No question about that.
Yeah.
So you really need to have confidence in that extended team. Limited access to the home, potentially the buyer agent just opening the front door, and then the inspector not allowing buyers to attend. So you really have to have confidence, and I'm not sure that many buyers will feel comfortable making an offer on a home with such limited access. Some clearly will, no question. They'll feel confident enough to be able to make that buying decision. But I think a large number will be somewhat reticent. That's why we see a gentle ramp up of buyer confidence as we begin to lift some of those restrictions.
Yeah.
Because my experience is that buyers just don't have that. Some do, but the vast majority just don't have that confidence. And that means we've got buyers being somewhat timid about making offers on homes, of course, with a lot of homes on the market. So that's kind of a challenge. Financing. We all thought financing was going to be easy, low interest rates. What was the problem? Now, of course, it's much different. As I mentioned before, higher credit scores, scrutiny of loan to value, jumbo loans, and so on. The other one, which may well come back to bite us too, especially if we shift to a different market, appraisals. Often they just drive by. They just look at the outside. Hopefully they also look at the assets that are on MLS, but you never know. And so there is the potential, we'll see as more homes close, there is the potential for lower appraisals. So buyers need to be aware of or need to be ready for the thought that those appraisals may come in lower because, one, the listing agent hasn't been there to explain
the market conditions,
of the home, and the appraiser simply hasn't been in the home. So there are two kind of gotchas a little bit we see with financing. One is the difficulty of getting financing, but then the other one that there may well be some appraisals that come in low.
It's not that the home, and I think it's got to be pointed out, it's not necessarily that the home sold for over market value. It's just that the appraiser hasn't been able to get into the home to see what the home looks like. They're working on averages. What does the average home of this condition or age and things look like? And they're not appraising it for as much as it is actually worth, I think, anyway.
That may well be the case.
Yeah.
That may well be the case. We'll see. Because we don't, together with inspection contingencies, difficulty for getting finances, and now low appraisals, it's going to prove to be a tough transaction. Is that the right way to put it?
But this is the whole reason that we're putting this stuff out there now. This is what we're seeing. And if we're warning you about the pitfalls or the potential challenges that could occur, you're going to know that this is expected. It's not a, oh my goodness, I had no idea this could happen. These are the sorts of things that we may find during the transaction. So, just knowing that we're in tune for it, and we're ready for it, and we know how to address it.
Forewarned is forearmed, whoever said that.
Yeah.
So just to kind of wrap the whole thing up, what does a virtual home selling experience look like? Lots of virtual consultations. Zoom is your friend. FaceTime is your friend.
Yep.
Virtual market analysis. Electronic signatures on everything. We're in the middle of rolling out a listing dashboard and a way for you to see exactly where everything is in the transaction.
You've got an example of that coming up, haven't you? Awesome. Okay. Yep.
Digital marketing. We've been doing most of these things. As I said, the only thing we added in terms of a full suite of digital marketing was putting electronic brochures on the multiple listing service.
The feature sheets.
Feature sheets, yeah. On the MLS system.
Yep.
Showing restrictions, we talked endlessly about that, and then e-recording at the registry. So much of it can be done from a home seller's perspective. Virtually, there is some things as we've talked about before that were different. Yes, so I do have a quick sneak peek, not quite live yet. It's getting close. What our listing dashboard would look like. Essentially, it's all the information about that home transaction. So this one is in the pre-listing phase. That is the phase before we go live, when we do the staging and the photography and so on. So all the information about that. And then the one next to it is a snapshot of what's actually happening while the home is on the market.
How many 3D views?
We've got open houses and broker tours there because we did the initial...
The raw data was done before.
Yeah, was done previously. There won't be those. But this shows you the number of views, for example, of the 3D tour to give you a sense of how many people
and also a video and a floor plan. And then you can go into the accepted offer, because when there's an accepted offer, it's got all of the different milestones of the accepted offer and when things have happened and stuff. So it's one place that you can go to and have all of the information about your home on the market.
On your phone, but on your phone.
Yeah.
We go
on your phone.
There we go. So that's kind of virtual selling. Now let's look at virtual buying. Much of it virtual consultation, of course. Still in person, though. I do think that there's only so much you can do. I had a video conference, a Zoom conference call with a client the other day, same client that I showed the house to this morning, in fact, and that was really good because we could spend as much time as we wanted. I could share my screen, show them the multiple listing service, show them the assessors database. So that consultation, that virtual consultation, went really well. It was in many cases much easier to do that than it would have been to do that in person, where I would have been fumbling with a phone or an iPad. Actually, I could just show them on the screen. So that's here to stay. I think that's definitely here to stay.
Yeah.
The difficulty, of course, is virtual home showing, and that I'm not 100% sure of right now. I do think the value that we as buyer's agents can add, really that comes out when you're actually in the home. And so doing that virtually is much, much more difficult. Get used to everything being digital, looking at the 3D tour, videos, the way you buy many things today, that's the way to do it. We can do everything through electronic signatures. I'm going to go write an offer when we're finished here, and it's all going to be e-signed. Inspections, virtual, hands-off, whatever word you want to call, but not actually being there in person. Buying dashboard, I'll give you a sense of that in a minute. We talked a lot about showing restrictions, and then e-recording at the registry. And so the buying dashboard is very much like the accepted offer for the listing dashboard. Here's all the different steps that we go through to get a home from accepted offer through to closing, and here you have in one place all of the information about that transaction, so you can see, when is the walkthrough scheduled, when are the buyers moving out, has the smoke and carbon been scheduled, has it been done, so all of that information really about the home. So that's kind of the new world, if you like, of a virtual buying, as in the same way with virtual selling. And that kind of wraps it up for buying and selling.
Although we have got some questions.
Okay.
We have got some questions on here. So let's look at, we've got Joe. Joe has asked a question that how important is it for the seller to move out? Okay. How important is it for the seller to move out? It is pretty important. I know that that's often not as feasible as some folks would like. If you've not got anywhere to move to, actually we have a home that's going to be coming on the market sometime mid-May, where they're moving into a home that's currently vacant, that's friends of theirs who are living in their second home, and they're going to be moving into their home temporarily when we bring their home on the market. So, it can happen. It is really, really important, because the buyers, there's a lot of people quite fearful. There's a lot of people quite fearful at the moment with, you hear all the stories about people dying and young people and, older people and all of this sort of stuff. People are fearful. So having an occupied home and going to see a home where that seller has just moved out, has just left half an hour before the showing, and you're wandering around in their space, not only is it potentially dangerous for the seller, but it's potentially dangerous for the buyer and the agent. And I'm just not sure that we'll get the full suite of buyers who would have seen that home otherwise if it's an occupied home. Did I say that? I'm not sure that we would get all of the buyers in there.
You're not going to get as many buyers through if it's an occupied home. I think there's no question about that. And almost inevitably, and what sellers really care about, of course, it's all very well getting so many buyers through. You've got a much higher likelihood, even if you've done everything. If everything's been done right in terms of getting to you on the market, you've got a much higher probability of getting a higher price the more people that have got through your home.
Well, it's like basic ratios. Basic ratios. Let's say 10% of buyers who come through your home fall in love with the home. And let's say you've got 10 buyers. Well, that's only one buyer that might potentially fall in love with your home. Whereas if you have 50 buyers come through, then the same ratios, you might have 5 buyers who fall in love with your home. And when you have more than one buyer who falls in love with your home, the price goes up. So the more buyers we can get in to see your home, the higher price we'll get. So, maybe if we talk about it from the ratio perspective. Got another question. We did cover this at one point, but perhaps we'll just go briefly over it again. The question is, how will we know when the market has changed? So I think they're meaning from when the market has changed from a lockdown to buyers having confidence
right?
Again.
Clearly, lockdown's pretty straightforward. But buyer confidence returning is somewhat nebulous.
Well, it is. I mean, for instance, the shelter in place. The shelter in place, I believe, and I didn't want to correct you.
You do, darling.
But
sorry, Danny. You do, Danny.
I think the shelter in place didn't come in until late March 27 or something.
Was it?
I think it was
seemed like mid-March was like, that's when
I know, but I think it was fairly late in that.
Maybe California was mid-March.
Yeah, it might have been. But we started seeing changes in what the buyers were doing much earlier than that as well. So it didn't really coincide with when the shelter in place came in place and when the buyers' activities sort of slowed down. I believe, again, it's not going to be based on when the shelter in place is lifted. I think it's going to be based on how how the buyers feel with the number. I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm looking to see how many people um, passed away the day before to give us an indication of, are we still ramping up? I mean, are we still sort of on the upward trajectory of this thing still being a huge problem? What is it? Flatten the curve, or are we on the way down? And I think that's probably what a lot of other people are doing. And I think once we see a few days of a week of numbers reducing, I think then the buyers will start feeling confident enough to come out and have a look. That may not necessarily coincide with when the shelter in place is lifted. So that's how we'll know. That's how we believe we'll know, because we'll start seeing private showings being made on the homes that we currently have on the market, the vacant homes that we currently have on the market. And our idea is to get other homes that we know want to come on the market as quickly as possible from that time, before we start getting into the June and July or massive numbers of homes coming on the market. We're going to be trying to get ours on earlier while there's still not as much inventory on the market. Any other questions?
We're going for almost 2 hours, so probably should stop.
My goodness, we have.
We probably should.
After a very slow start.
Very good. Careful, I'll just cut you off now. I'll just stop this thing any minute now.
All right, so thank you for joining in. We will be doing another, now that we've figured out how to do this.
We figured out. No, we didn't figure anything out.
Now we'll be doing another one tomorrow, Wednesday, April 15. That one is targeting the Arlington market. We're going to be talking about the statistics associated with that town. That's a little bit different to the Lexington market, but we will also be doing next month's seminar. Will be on the same thing. We'll be filling people in on what's been going on in the last 4 weeks from today, and how things are changing, just to sort of keep you up to date with what's going on, because information is power. Information is power. There's a phrase, something. Is that it? Okay.
It, yep.
I thought I got that one wrong. Anyway,
right.
So thank you very much for joining us, and stay safe. Please stay safe. That's the most important thing. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.